Tonight, we are going to talk about one of my favorite Bible stories. How many of you know that Bible stories just mean a little more to you when you can relate to the characters, right? And I have a problem with a lot of Bible stories because most of them, it seems like, have really tall people in them. Like last time I talked about Goliath, and David was short then, but only because he was a kid. He was probably, like Braylon. And even then, Braylon's about my height, so. And then, of course, there's Goliath, and he was huge, and then Saul was a big guy, and I think Peter was a big guy. So a lot of the Bible stories mention how tall people are. Only a couple mention people who are short. So now we're going to talk about a short man. I think he's one of the more familiar names in the Bible because he has a fun little nursery rhyme that goes along with it, which I'm not going to sing because I'm just not very good at it. But we're going to talk about Zacchaeus tonight. I love the story of Zacchaeus because I think there's a whole lot of content packed into about 10 verses in Zacchaeus, in Luke 19, where we're going to be tonight when we talk about Zacchaeus. Before we get started, I just want to let you know, I'm going to talk about some things that are going on in our culture, in our world today, and unless I explicitly take a stance, I'm not taking a stance. I'm just referencing them for the sake of some reference for you guys about where this could apply in your lives. So we're going to go ahead and start off in verse 1. It says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. So this is the part I really relate to, being in a crowd and not being able to see over people's heads. So people always ask me, Chad, why don't you go to more football games? And my response is usually, well, it's all well and good, except half the time I can't see more than half the field. So there'll be somebody, I told the business I was going to make fun of them today a little bit. So like Allie's pretty tall. It's like normally you sit behind a girl and you're good, but Allie's much taller than I am. So I get stuck or Brittany, Brittany, I love Brittany's hair, but it is larger than straight hair. So it blocks more of the field, right? And it's just hard to see over people. I'm constantly trying to lean so I'm looking over somebody's shoulder because there's no way I'm looking over anybody's head. There's no way I could have played football because I would have never been able to see anything going on. Everybody would just be so tall. And so I feel for Zacchaeus here because he wants to see Jesus, and he can't. He can't because everybody else is taller than him. And this is, I feel that. Because this happens to me all the time. In fact, I've been in church services where I couldn't see the words on the screen because a Goliath sat in front of me after I sat down. I was like, I wish I knew these songs. It'd be real helpful right now when I can't see the screen. Now churches tend to have the two screens or one screen really high, and it hasn't been such a big deal, but that's happened to me a few more times than I'd like to be honest about, where I just wasn't able to see. But I like Zacchaeus here because he found a way around. He got up the tree, and he got to see Jesus. There are a few things we learn about Zacchaeus right away in these first 4 verses. The first is that he's a tax collector. Now, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but some of you don't. A lot of people don't like paying taxes, right? How many of you the springtime is great because it's springtime and winter's ending, and then you get your W-2 and you're like, I don't think I paid enough. I don't want to file this. I think I marked 1 too many exemptions, or 6 when I should have marked 0. And I'm going to have to pay a lot to the IRS. So Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and inherently not very popular, but he was also a tax collector for the Romans, which would have made him doubly unpopular, because frankly the Jews who lived in Israel at the time weren't even sure they should be paying taxes to Rome. They thought it might actually be sinful to send money that way, which is why in Matthew 22, the Pharisees asked Jesus, tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? So there was a lot of hatred towards tax collectors at the time. So not only would Zacchaeus be a sinner to them, he would be a traitor to his own people. And I don't know about you, but we have some pretty infamous traitors in America. 200 some odd years later, we still talk about Benedict Arnold's. So Zacchaeus would have been not well liked, but he's willing to climb a tree to see Jesus. Number 2, it says that he's wealthy. So tax collectors in ancient times, in ancient Rome, basically made their money by overcharging. So if you owed $5, Zacchaeus would charge you $8. If you owed $1,000, he'd charge you $1,500. He would collect money, and in fact, he was the chief tax collector. So he was above all the other tax collectors. So there probably wasn't a person in Jericho that hadn't been cheated by Zacchaeus at one point or another, because all the tax collectors collected all the taxes, and they all gave Zacchaeus a cut. So Zacchaeus was very, very wealthy. In fact, there's a good chance he was one of the most wealthy people in town. Certainly, most likely the wealthiest that didn't really work for their money. He just kind of sat there and let other people collect taxes and got a cut. Kind of double dipping. And number 3, we learned he's short. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there's pretty empirical evidence to state people like tall people more. It's true. It's true. You can document it scientifically. There's these little psychological studies. People tend to look up to tall people more. People tend to respect tall people more. It's true. It's true. I compensate with a beard and a lot of jokes, but it's true. It's true. You're more likely to look up to somebody who's tall, who's of large stature, as a leader. And we call small people Napoleons, right? Little Napoleons. You got a Napoleonic complex. I've been accused of that a few times in my life as well. Largely before I really gave my life to Christ, I was accused of having a Napoleonic complex. Maybe a little true back then. Just a little. So in verses 5 through 7, we continue on and we see, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He is gone to be the guest of a sinner." Growing up, I didn't really understand that. When I was a little Chad, thought I knew everything at the age of 6. Everybody has the teenagers that think they knew everything. My mom had a 6-year-old who definitely knew everything. And my sister came up behind me, she was the exact same way. But I didn't really get it because obviously Jesus had to go to the home of a sinner because he's Jesus, and that's what he's here for. He's here to save sinners. So I didn't really understand until I was much older why this would bother people. And then when I finally realized, that they didn't like tax collectors and they didn't really think that Jesus was coming to save sinners from an eternal punishment, but they thought he was coming to establish an earthly kingdom, and I kind of got it. But then I thought, surely people don't make the same mistake today. And I put it out of my mind. Until recently, I was reading this, and I'd also heard 2 stories. So the first one, I was listening to an interview on the radio, and this pastor, he's a member of President Trump's religious council, was being interviewed about why the members of the religious council, his religious advisory committee, all these pastors, hadn't started quitting yet. Because Trump's science council and his business council had started bleeding members. People had started walking away in protest. And the interviewer couldn't seem to understand that this pastor felt compelled to stay whether or not he agreed with Trump's policies, but because he felt like Trump needed good guidance from a holy figure, from somebody who was going to be praying for President Trump and praying for guidance about what to tell President Trump at these meetings and what maybe God's will for this country were. That it didn't matter whether or not President Trump did things that we liked or disliked, but that he deserved a pastor or pastors that would stand by him and continue to guide him. But people were upset. People were legitimately upset at the idea that a pastor would stand by somebody they didn't like. I was confused. I was so surprised at how the world didn't understand our mission to reach people that aren't necessarily wholesome or clean. That the church was here to do more than just stick around with people who have never done anything or said anything wrong in their lives, but to provide guidance and God's word to a people that aren't very good people. Again, that's one of those things. I'm not casting judgment on Trump. That's just the situation. And then I watched a documentary on Netflix, and it's about a man. It's a black man who he goes around and he makes these relationships with members of the KKK. And he goes around and he's a musician and he plays in bars where members of the KKK are known to go to. He goes to KKK meetings and he befriends these members, some very high-ranking members of the KKK, over racism. Their message, their ideology would say that they should never be friends. But he goes out and he pursues friendships with them. And because of his relationship with these members of the KKK, dozens upon dozens have left the organization, renounced their beliefs. Actually, a lot of them give him their old robes and awards. And towards the end of the documentary, he was talking to some members of another civil rights movement, a younger civil rights movement, a more recent civil rights movement, and they were angry that he would give these members of a racist organization a chance at redemption. They were angry that a member of their own race would spend time trying to reach out to members of a different race who they didn't like. They were angry at the idea that people could change, that their enemies could become their friends. And it hit me that he was receiving, and these pastors were receiving, the same criticism that Jesus did. That they didn't like, that they were just hanging out with somebody they didn't like. And that even if they didn't agree with them, even if Jesus didn't agree with what Zacchaeus was doing to people, even though Jesus obviously didn't agree with him cheating people out of their money, just association with Zacchaeus was enough to make people mad. Just association with the president was enough to make people mad. And just enough as to associate with members of an organization, regardless of your intentions or the results of your actions, was enough to make people mad. And that made me kind of sad, because I like to believe that our church tries to do a good job of finding the Zacchaeuses in this world, of trying to search them out and invite them to our homes, to our churches. Jesus actually goes to his home. There might be a lesson in there too. But like all good stories, there's a twist. And in verse 8, it says, "But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, 'Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount.' And Jesus said to him, 'Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost.'" And I love that. I love that, just those few verses, because they demonstrate an essential principle of our faith, that people can change. That Zacchaeus can go from a tax collector and a cheat to somebody universally despised by all of his peers, to somebody who was extraordinarily charitable and giving and just and fair. That, just like that, one meal, one evening, one day spent with Jesus could change his life forever. And not just his life, but the life of his whole household. So not just Zacchaeus was saved, but his whole house was saved. All because Jesus looked up at a tree, saw a man there who was excited to see him. Excited at the prospect of seeing Jesus. Just to get to see him. That's all Zacchaeus did. That was the effort he put in. Jesus said, "Let me come to your home." Jesus took the next step, but Zacchaeus was so excited to see Jesus that he climbed a tree to see him. I want to go back to that for a minute, because I don't know if you know this or not, but Nike didn't exist 2,000 years ago. And I've seen what counted for ladders 2,000 years ago, and they're definitely not, $100 aluminum, rated things that you get from Lowe's. They're wooden, they're crickety. So I don't know how Zacchaeus got to the top of the sycamore tree or got up in it far enough to see Jesus, and I don't even really know whether or not there were a bunch of leaves or dead leaves or a beehive or what was in that tree. But Zacchaeus was in, ancient garb. He probably had sandals on, or was barefoot, and he had robes. And I have to tell you, I think it'd be pretty hard to get up in that tree dressed like that. In fact, I know I'm not in the greatest shape, and I'd have a pretty far way to reach the lowest limb, as I imagine Zacchaeus did too. But I imagine it was a little bit of an effort to get up into that tree. And that maybe Zacchaeus had to sacrifice a little bit of his pride for everybody to see this immensely powerful person in this city hobble up into a tree. When's the last time anybody here has climbed a tree? I'm a little disappointed in all of the youth right now. There you go. Elliot's like, I climbed a tree. There you go. Or they're not paying attention or not having adventures. I'm not sure which. But you guys don't have great trees in Oklahoma. You guys have shrubs, right? You climb trees, Avery?
Yes.
It's really good. So I want you to think for a moment, who would you climb a tree for? Who would you climb a tree to see? I missed out on seeing quite a few people, or quite a few things, just because I wasn't able to see. And sometimes the difference between me being able to see something and not was as simple as stepping up onto the bench behind me. But there isn't a whole lot that I would, climb a tree for. I'm certainly not climbing a tree for, Taylor Swift or Justin Bieber, In fact, I've had the opportunity to see several presidential speeches, and you know what? Even though it was sometimes pretty hard to see them, I never thought, well, I should climb that tree over there. That seems like a great idea. And sometimes I wonder if I was Zacchaeus, and I was in Jericho, and it was kind of hot, and it was in the middle of the day, and there was a crowd, that I would make the same decision. I wonder if I would be so excited to see Jesus that I would climb a tree. That I'd run ahead of the crowd, I'd get ahead of Jesus, I'd take the time to figure out where he was going and then climb up a tree to see him. And I gotta be honest with you, I'd like to believe that I would, but I also know that when I wake up some mornings, bedside assembly seems pretty nice. My comforter and my pillow seems really nice. And I'm being honest with you right now. I love church, I love this church, I love being here. Sometimes I like to sleep too. And I think, Zacchaeus probably had a reasonably comfortable life, as comfortable as it got back then, so he probably could have stayed home and just ate some things. He didn't have to climb a sycamore fig tree. He could just had somebody bring them to him. Somebody could have gone and saw Jesus for him and tried to get Jesus to come back to his house. But Zacchaeus leaves his house, he leaves his work, I'm sure he's losing money, and he goes and sees Jesus. And the whole story changes. because he was eager to have that contact. Just that little bit of contact. Not even a lot of it. He just wanted to see him. We're incredibly lucky today because I don't even have to go see Jesus to meet Jesus. Jesus made a way for me to meet him and see him without ever leaving my own home if I was so inclined. I could spend time in prayer and devotion to my Bible, and I could get to know Jesus really well. In fact, on the way here, in fact, I think I passed like 4 or 5 churches just to get here. There's like a Methodist one, there's like a Church of Christ, and there's a Baptist. I think there's another Pentecostal one, where I make a right. I think there's a Covenant church. I'm not really sure what kind of church that is, but I think I passed 4 or 5 churches just to get here. And sometimes I think, why wouldn't you get up and go? Why aren't people excited to meet a man who can save them? Excited to go someplace that all that it's there for, all the church is here for, is to tell people about Jesus, to guide and direct people towards the Savior, to show his compassion and his love to a modern age. And people don't get out of bed to come here on Sunday. And they don't come out of work and come here on Wednesday. And in fact, there's a pretty good chance over the past year, you were that person. That one day you woke up and just decided, today's just not a good day. You just weren't that excited about coming to worship today. Just weren't that excited to come and learn about Jesus today, to come spend time with him. And maybe that wasn't on a Sunday morning, but maybe it was a Monday morning. And instead of doing that devotional plan that you have on your phone, it's delivered to you, and you get that notification, you just swiped it off to the left or to the right, probably your phone closes them, got ready for work, and drove on in. That's all you thought about it for the day. Maybe you just weren't excited about Jesus on a Monday morning or a Tuesday night. And I just want to be more excited. I just want to be a little bit more enthused about meeting Jesus, about spending time with him. I want to be like Zacchaeus, where if Jesus asked me to come to my house for me to put him up and feed him and get to spend a dinner or an evening with him, that I would drop all of my plans just to have him there. I want everything else in my life to make so little meaning that I would cancel anything to spend an evening with him at my house. And the reality is, it's not that hard to have him at your house every evening. You just got to clear your books and, open the Bible. But I wonder how many of us do that. I just wonder. So that's my first takeaway from this, is that it's incredibly easy for us to spend time with Jesus. We don't have to climb a tree. I don't have to scout out his route. I don't have to hope that he sees me among the leaves and ask to come to my house. I don't have to follow him around for 3 years. I don't have to be shipwrecked or persecuted or crucified. And just spend some time with him. It's incredibly easy to get to know Jesus incredibly well. In fact, he's like the most available friend you have. Because you know what happens is I invite, let's say I create an event for the youth, and I put out a sign-up sheet, and 20 of them sign up. So I already went missing 10 or 15 youth who just said, oh, I know I can't go. And then on the day of, 25 of them signed up, 20 of them show up, one of them's got to leave early, right? So even our youth, they don't have jobs, right? They're not always available to come spend time with us, to come and spend time, with a pastor or an event, at a youth camp or a mission trip. But Jesus is. Any time of day. You're a night owl, he's there. You an early bird, you there? You got a 2-hour lunch every day because your work schedule's kind of weird? You there? Just making him the priority, like Zacchaeus did. That's my first takeaway, be like Zacchaeus. And my second is don't be like the people of Jericho. You see, they judge who is and is not worthy of spending time with Jesus. They judge that Zacchaeus wasn't worthy of Jesus' time. They judge that Jesus was wrong to spend time with him. And sometimes I think we do that too. We look at a group or a neighborhood or maybe an unsavory gentleman's lounge club thing, and we say the people in there, the people in that neighborhood, they don't belong in our church. They don't belong in our body. They're not clean. They're dirty. They're too far gone. And I know that Christians do this. I know that we do this. I'm not saying that I've heard people in this church say it, but I know that people do this. And I know that people do it to their own families. Because where I work, every day I hear a family member say, I would help them, but I know they're not going to change. I would help them, but I know what they're like. I'd help them, but I don't think they're helpful. I don't think anybody can help them do what they need to do. And I've seen people turn away infants, and newborns, and 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and 12-year-olds, because they thought the parents were too far gone. Their own family, their own nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters, they said, no, I will not help. Not because of the kids, but because the parents are too far gone. And I'm always asking myself, how do you know? How do you know who's too far gone? How do you know who isn't going to be saved from their addiction, who isn't going to be saved from their sin? How do you know? I always want to ask, how do you know? Isn't it worth a shot? It doesn't cost you anything to love somebody. It doesn't cost you anything to tell them that there's a Savior, that there's a better way, a better path. There shouldn't be anything stopping you from helping your family. People who tell me, well, I'm just too busy. Maybe one of my church friends can help them. I'm not kidding, I've heard this. I'm too busy to help my own family in a time of crisis, but maybe somebody else from my church can do it. Maybe somebody from that church down the street can do it. Maybe my cousin can do it. Maybe my nephew can do it. Maybe my daughter can do it. I'm not kidding. They've said, here, my 18-year-old daughter is better able to help this family who's in crisis than I am. I hear it all the time. It's incredibly painful to hear. And I'm telling you this today because I know that people who profess to have faith in a Christ that can change people would rather pass the buck to somebody else because they don't believe that somebody can change. They'd rather believe that it's not on them to put in a little bit of effort. They want to believe that nothing wouldn't change if they just climbed a tree. And who are we to say that? Didn't Jesus come to save all the world? Didn't he come to not for the good people, but for the sinners? Not for the sheep he already has in his flock, but the one who's gotten lost? Didn't he come for people who are hurting and in pain? The people who had already had 5 husbands, or the people who cheated out their entire town of money? And didn't those same people change? And I want to believe that I'm not guilty of the same thing. That I don't look at parents and say, you're a lost cause. But I know that I am not perfect, and that I'm human, and I have the same propensity to make judgments based on my own worldly understanding, my own flesh, my own brain. And so today I want to challenge you, just as I'm challenging myself, that instead of looking at somebody and just seeing their history or their situation or their crime, to instead try to look at them like God would look at them. As a sheep that's lost, somebody who's been chained away in slavery, who's just waiting to be free. And ask yourself, Holy Spirit, what can I do? Where can I go? Who can I talk to? How can I help? Because I believe that if we ask the Holy Spirit and we genuinely listen for an answer, that He'll guide us in the right direction. That He'll tell us who to help. He'll tell us where to spend our resources. He'll tell us where to spend all our time. And I almost guarantee you, it will not be in the same places that you would have gone, that you would have looked, or you would have spent. It's just not. Because I'll tell you what, when an investor's looking for an investment, they're not usually looking for something that's going to be real hard to do. They're not really looking at something that has a low chance of success, or a low reward. But God does. Because He knows. He knows what the chance of success is. He knows what the reward is. And it's not our job to choose for Him. It's our job to listen and obey. The third thing that I want to take away from this today is that we should just be spending time with people who don't know Jesus, just as a general rule. Not these people that we're searching out, that the Holy Spirit's looking for a specific opportunity. But I want to ask you today, how many people do you know? How many people have you invited into your home that don't already have a relationship with Jesus? And in fact, I'm not even going to let us take that easy way out. How many times have you gone to their home? Somebody who doesn't know Jesus, with the intention of just being a light in their lives. Not just because you're their witness, but just to be a light to their life. Because I believe that Jesus could have gone and spent a day with Zacchaeus and shown him some love and walked away, and Zacchaeus not turn his life around, and Jesus still have found that to be a successful encounter. I believe that God can work that way too. That we might plant a seed and somebody else might harvest it. But when's the last time you went to somebody's home who wasn't living for the Lord, who wasn't family? That neighbor, maybe the guy that plays his music really loud at 11 o'clock on Friday. When's the last time you invited them into your home, gave them a gift, showed them something other than shutting your blinds because their music's too loud, or because they like motorcycles and the motorcycle's too loud? I have great neighbors, guys. I have great neighbors. When's the last time that you reached out? When's the last time that you were as earnest as Zacchaeus? When's the last time you wanted to climb a tree just because of how excited you were to get something done, to have an encounter with God? I think there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of challenges here in these 10 verses. And I'm not here to discount that sometimes it's difficult to help people who we don't think are good investments. But I'm here to tell you that a lot of people in the Bible weren't good investments, but God used them anyways. And I'm here to tell you, I was not a good investment. I was not somebody that, looking back, anybody should have spent any time on. Anybody should have invested any time in. Anybody should have spent any resources on. But the truth is, somebody didn't listen to themselves. Somebody listened to the Holy Spirit. They took me, and I truly believe I was a bad investment. I was unlikely to truly give my life to the Lord. But some people decided to try anyways. And that's why I'm here today. Because somebody was willing to climb a tree for me.